morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'm KT, and this is what happened. Tonight, I have a story of a poet, a madam, a teacher, a streetcar conductor, a composer, a singer, a dancer, and so much more. It's a story of overcoming childhood trauma and life's hardships to rise to unpredictable heights. This is the story of Dr. Maya Angelou. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you about a worldwide icon. Let's start with part 1, A Silent Childhood. Maya Angelou was actually born Marguerite Annie Johnson. Her father was Baxter Johnson. He was a doorman and a Navy dietitian. Her mother was Vivian Baxter Johnson, who was a nurse and a car dealer. What a combination. She had one older brother. He was 1 year older than her. His name was Bailey Johnson Jr. Dr. Angelou actually wrote 7 autobiographies. Therefore, we know a lot about her early life. She described her parents' marriage as calamitous. At 3 years old, their marriage ended, and as a result, her father sent her and her brother on a train ride along down to Stamps, Arkansas to live with his mother, Annie Henderson. Now, Annie Henderson was a wonder, especially because this was the Great Depression and then World War II, and she was highly successful. She did very well financially. She owned a general store, and she sold basic goods that people needed, and this contributed a lot to her financial success. In addition to that, she was said to make very wise but honest investments. Both children thrived in this environment until Maya was 7 years old. I'm going to refer to her as Maya in the beginning when she's in her childhood, and then I'll refer to her as Dr. Angelou later in life. But she got the name Maya because her brother, being 1 year older, couldn't pronounce Marguerite, and when he would try, it would come back as Maya, like my sister, Maya. We'll talk about how she got her last name later. But the children were thriving in Stamps until her father unexpectedly appeared. He returned both children to their mother in St. Louis. This turned out to be a very detrimental time in Maya's childhood. At the age of 8 years old, Maya was assaulted physically by her mother's boyfriend. She did confide in her brother Bailey, who immediately alerted their family. He was arrested and he was tried and convicted. However, he only served 1 day in prison. After his release, 4 days later, it was believed to have been done by Maya's uncles. She blamed herself for his death, and so she went silent for 5 years. That's from about 8 years old to about 13 years old. She did not speak at all. But right after this happened, her and her brother sent back to live with their father's mother, their paternal grandmother, in Stamps, Arkansas. Now, this period of silence turned out to be a formative moment for Maya in that it shaped a lot of things about her character and how she learned and perceived things. It is believed to be during this time where she developed her extraordinary memory. She developed a deep love of books and literature because she did a lot of reading during this time period. She also developed a great ability to listen to people and to observe and watch the world around her. During this time period of silence, she attended the Lafayette County Training School in Stamps, Arkansas. Eventually, she came across a teacher named Mrs. Bertha Flowers. And fun fact, there are still plenty of the Flowers relatives in Arkansas today. But Mrs. Flowers was credited by Maya with helping her to speak again because she would challenge her. She would say, "You do not love poetry until you speak it." And she introduced her to the works of Charles Dickens, William Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe, Georgia Douglas Johnson, and James Weldon Johnson, but also Black female artists such as Frances Harper, Anne Spencer, and Jessie Fawcett. And so Maya began to speak again. The next big life change came at the age of 14, where Maya and her brother were sent to live with their mother again, but this time in Oakland, California. During World War II, Maya attended the California Labor School. At 16, she actually became the first Black female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. And she was attracted to this job because she noted that the women had these nice fitted outfits. She liked the buttons on them. She really just liked how they looked. And so she really strove hard for this job. But her mother warned her, to do this job, you'll have to be at work early. You'll have to work harder than everyone else. And later in life, Dr. Angelou would receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. And it was a part of a session called Women Who Move the Nation. So during this time, she was in school. She was working as a streetcar conductor. About 3 weeks after graduating from school, at the age of 17, she gave birth to her son, who she named Clyde. He did later change his name to Guy Johnson. Let's move on to part 2. Part 2, A Life Well Traveled. After Maya graduated, she had a really rough time at times as a single mother, and so she worked a bevy of jobs. She was a cook, she was a waitress, and she was really open in her autobiographies about this work. She also served as a prostitute during a time period, and she was a madam to lesbian women. When asked why she was so open about this in her writings, she says she felt like too many people tell young people that they never did anything wrong. They never had skeletons in their closet. And she said she didn't have any skeletons. She didn't even have a closet because she wanted to be open. Sometimes to her, young people make bad decisions or mistakes or doing what life dictates that they need to do at that time, and they feel like they can't come back from it because the adults around them are pretending like they never done anything controversial in their lives. So she was hoping by sharing that some young people will understand you can still come back from any of these challenges. You have to forgive yourself and go on with your life, was her exact words. Time went on and Maya met a Greek electrician and former sailor named Angelos. They got married in 1951. During this time is when she really started with dance. She met dance choreographers Alvin Ailey and Ruth Beckford. As a dance team, they called themselves Al and Rita. They performed modern dances at fraternal black organizations throughout San Francisco, but it wasn't something that blew up into a big success. Maya, her husband, and her son actually moved to New York City for a year so that she could study African dance with Trinidadian dancer Pearl Primus. In 1954, Maya's first marriage ended, and back in San Francisco, she danced around clubs professionally, including a nightclub called the Purple Onion where she sang and danced calypso. It was there where she kind of gathered a following. They told her that she should really lean into her name Maya instead of Marguerite and continue to use a variation of her ex-husband's last name Angelou because they felt like it had an exotic ring to it, Maya Angelou. And the name stuck. Miss Angelou's next stop in life led her to Europe when she toured with the opera production of Porgy and Bess. This is when she decided that she needed to learn the language of the countries that she lived in, and so she did. Maya Angelou spoke 6 languages. She spoke English, French, and Spanish. She also spoke Italian, Arabic, and Fanti. During this time period, she also appeared in an off-Broadway review, and it inspired the 1957 film Calypso Heatwave, in which she sang and performed her own compositions. In 1959, Maya Angelou met John Oliver Killens, a novelist, and at his urging, she moved to New York to concentrate on her writing career. It was there where she joined the Harlem Writers Guild, and she met several major African-American authors. She also was published for the very first time. In 1960, she met Martin Luther King Jr., and after this meeting, she decided to organize the Cabaret for Freedom, and it benefited the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Her contributions to the civil rights movement as a fundraiser and organizer were so effective that she ended up being named the Northern Coordinator for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It was during this time where she also began her pro-Castro and anti-apartheid activism. Around the age of 33, she met Vansumzi Maki. He was a South African freedom fighter. They never got married, but her and her son moved with him to Cairo for about a year, and there she worked as an editor for an English language paper called The Arab Observer. When their relationship ended in 1962, her and her son moved to Accra, Ghana, so that her son could attend college. But while there, he was in an automobile accident where he was seriously injured, so they stayed there until he was healed and well, and that was in 1965. While there, she became an administrator for the University of Ghana. She also became active in the African American expatriate community. An expatriate does not mean that you are not a citizen anymore. It just means that you are living abroad from your native country. She also wrote and broadcast for Radio Ghana, and she worked and performed for Ghana's National Theater. While living in Ghana, she became really good friends with Malcolm X. She met him during a visit in the early 1960s. She actually helped him when she returned to the U.S. in 1965. She helped him to build a new organization called the Organization of Afro-American unity. But shortly after this, he was assassinated, and she was so devastated. She actually went to live with her brother in Hawaii to try to recuperate and to have time to grieve. While in Hawaii, she actually resumed her singing career as well. 2 years later, in 1967, Miss Angelou was ready to get back to the world. So she actually moved from Hawaii with her brother to New York again. And there she met her lifelong friend, Rosa Guy, and she actually renewed her friendship with James Baldwin, who she had met in Paris in the 1950s. She called him a brother. She also had another very good friend, Jerry Purcell, who provided her with a stipend while she worked on her writing. That is how bad the people around her wanted her to express herself and to get her writings out to the world. In 1968, tragedy would strike again when Martin Luther King asked Miss Angelou to organize a march, but she postponed it. Right after that, he was assassinated on her 40th birthday, April 4, 1968. This was another devastating blow. Miss Angelou was immediately thrust back into grief. However, it was also almost like an awakening of her creative spirit because the creative genius just flowed from this point forward. So let's go to part 3. Part 3, a blossoming late career. Dr. Angelou had what would be considered an amazing late career. In 1972, Georgia was produced by a Swedish film company, and it was filmed in Sweden. It was the first screenplay by a Black woman. She did everything for this movie, including writing the film soundtrack. A year later, Dr. Angelou married Paul Defoe. He was a Welsh carpenter, and over the next 10 years, she really thrived. During this time, she was a composer. She wrote songs for the likes of Roberta Flack, and I love Roberta Flack. She composed movie scores. She wrote articles, short stories, TV scripts, documentaries, autobiographies, and poetry. She referred to herself as a reluctant actor, but she was nominated for a Tony Award. That was for a role in Jerome Kilty's play, Look Away. She was even a theater director. I mean, wow, what a woman. In 1977, Dr. Angelou appeared in a role for the miniseries Roots. In the late 70s, she met Oprah Winfrey, who was an anchor in Baltimore at the time, and they formed a close friendship. But in 1981, Miss Angelou and Paul Defoe got divorced. At this time, she actually returned to the southern U.S. because she felt like she needed to come to terms with her past there. I don't know if you all knew, but she never even had a bachelor's degree. But despite not having this degree, she actually accepted a lifetime Reynolds professorship at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Of course, she got some backlash from certain people because they felt like she was only there because she was a celebrity. She didn't have a degree. But I mean, let's be real. She was more than accomplished. She spoke 6 languages. And I would venture to say that probably not many other people that worked there could do half of the things she could. But she taught philosophy, ethics, theology, science, theater, and of course, writing. Just to name a few other schools she taught at the University of California, the University of Kansas. We mentioned the University of Ghana already. She was recognized as a Rockefeller Foundation Scholar at Yale University. In 1993, Dr. Angelou made another huge milestone. She performed her poem on the Pulse of Mourning at President Bill Clinton's inauguration. This was a big deal because no poet had recited a poem at any inauguration since Robert Frost at John F. Kennedy's inauguration in 1961. So that's a 32-year gap. This performance renewed interest in some of her previous works and helped new people discover those works. And 2 years later, she was asked to deliver another one of her poems called A Brave and Startling Truth at the 50-year anniversary of the United Nations. In 1996, Dr. Angelou achieved her goal of directing a feature film, Down in the Delta. It featured actors Alfred Woodard and Wesley Snipes. She also collaborated with R&B artists Ashford and Simpson on 7 of the 11 tracks of their album, Been Found. This was how she made her only appearance on the Billboard charts. In 2000, Dr. Angelou partnered with Hallmark, and she began to write greeting cards and all types of cards. She also had decorative household items inspired by her that were sold through Hallmark.
Again, she took flack for this, flack for commercializing, I don't know what, being a poet, but honey, make your money, right? Greeting cards and cards touch people as well. And that is something that she cited when asked about their criticism. In 2008, Dr. Angelou was out again. She was supporting Hillary Clinton, but when President Barack Obama won the nomination, she shifted her support to him. She had a span of about 10 years where she toured and did lectures all over the world. And in 2010, she actually donated all of her personal papers and career memorabilia to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem. In 2013, Dr. Angelou published the seventh volume of her autobiography series entitled Mom and Me and Mom. At some point in her life, she was doing work for the channel that would be the precursor to PBS. And later in 2008, in a full circle moment, she found herself on PBS's Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr. She actually found out her maternal great grandmother, Mary Lee, had been emancipated after the Civil War. After she was freed, her former owner, he had assaulted her and gotten her pregnant. And so he made her sign a false statement claiming that it was another white man's child. He actually was indicted of forcing her to sign a false statement. So that would be perjury, but he didn't serve any time, and you know why. After that, what was really sad is that Mary Lee was forced to go to a Clinton County poorhouse. That's where she eventually had Marguerite Baxter, who would have been Maya Angelou's grandmother. Maya Angelou passed away at 86 years old. There were several memorial services held for her. Her son spoke, Michelle Obama spoke, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Clinton, so many people spoke on her behalf. And with that, we'll go into part 4, my final thoughts. Dr. Maya Angelou was an amazing woman with an amazing story. She overcame so many things. One of the best things that I felt like I learned about her at a very young age from reading her poetry was that she talked about being an everyday woman, an everyday person with everyday problems, and how that did not have to define your entire life. It didn't make you less than, it didn't give you less of an ability to rise up and be more. You didn't have to be some kind of super glamorous, extraordinary person to do extraordinary things. That message has stuck with me through my entire life. As I was making this video, I was trying to think what would be my favorite poem. I've not read all of Maya Angelou's poems. I'm sure I haven't, but I know that I have read some of the more popular ones as well as some that are probably less talked about, but still it's the most popular ones that grip me the most. Still I Rise has to be my favorite. It was a close one, but I think it embodies the message of her life. To see how she embraced the world was one thing. Like, she traveled, she lived places. She didn't just visit. She learned the languages. She respected the culture. Because of that, she often talked about how people have all of these similarities, but sometimes the perception is taught to you that people are very, very different. But that is not what she found the world to be. Learn about her story and the abuses that she suffered as a child is really upsetting, but it let me know how much of a prodigy she really was. For a child to be silent for 5 years speaks of the gravity of the trauma that they must have experienced. Then for her to come back in her later life and be really open and publish these things that happened to her so that other people can know that they were not alone, it's so brave. I think another thing that stood out for me was the friendships that she built. If you have a friend who says, I want you to write so much, I'm going to give you a stipend every month so that you can live and take care of yourself while you just focus on writing. I mean, goodness gracious, that just spoke to how she inspired people. Even the friends she was friends with, James Baldwin, who was a prolific writer on his own. I mean, I've definitely read a lot of his work. To have met people and touched people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, to just be this little girl from St. Louis, Missouri / Stamps, Arkansas. I'm an Arkansas girly, and it's just really inspiring. And I think the last thing that stood out to me was the criticisms that she received. It just reinforces what I've learned over life, that the more you do, the better you do, the more unafraid you are to reach for things, the more criticism you will naturally draw. And I think a lot of that comes from people being afraid to reach for their own dreams or feeling like they don't have their own dreams. It is startling to people when you meet someone who's not afraid to do that, not afraid to be successful, not afraid to fail. And that's one thing that Dr. Angelou talked about, how she tried all these different things. I mean, I I read this long list of jobs and professions that she tried. But what she talked about is how a lot of things she did, she didn't expect to be the top of or the most successful in it. She just did it because she wanted to learn more about it and she wanted to try it. And there have definitely been blessings that I missed by walking in fear. But the older I get, the more I try to live by a standard like Dr. Angelou lived, and that's just to be out in life. The more that I put out for this channel, the more that I go back and relearn about people and learn more about people. It's true that none of these people are perfect. They fail. They work as prostitutes in this case. They do all kinds of things to keep living and surviving. But when Dr. Angelou talks about forgiving yourself to keep living the rest of your life, it is so poignant because that's something that I was raised with growing up, to just not live your life full of regrets. You just have to live it to the fullest. That was reinforced with Dr. Maya Angelou's story. To be a woman with no degree, she also proves that degrees don't equal knowledge, not for everything in life. And I like how she walked her walk, how she lived her life, how she recognized herself and uplifted other people. That has been my take on Dr. Maya Angelou. Let me know in the comments if you've ever read any of her poetry or if you've ever learned anything about her. And until next time, remember, keep learning, be happy, and always have a blessed day. Bye bye.